Good afternoon. My name is Julia Min, and I'm a first-year full-time MBA student. And this is Tim Huang, a sophomore at UCLA, majoring in computer science. We are student directors of today's panel discussion, focused on technological innovation, the importance of collaboration in advanced technologies, scientific advancements, and R&D. As rapid technological advancements promise new and exciting changes to industry, society, and lifestyles, the US and China, the world's first and second largest research and development spending countries, and home to the world's largest tech companies, are well positioned to lead this next phase of technological innovation. Our panelists today will share their experiences driving innovation and change by developing new strategies, technologies, products, and business models, and will discuss their successes, observations, and lessons learned from cross-border collaborations. We are delighted to welcome the following speakers on this panel: Jacky Huang, CEO of American Wonder Porcelain; Brice Nzeukou, Product Manager of Ampaire; Julia Qian, Managing Director of the Blueshirt Group; and Jeff Yang, CFO of Global Wind Capital Corporation, a subsidiary of Shanying International.
This panel will be moderated by UCL alumna Heidi Feng. She is a managing director in PwC's deals practice and provides technical accounting advice and assistance to companies that are pursuing or seeking to pursue a capital raising transaction or significant M&A activities. For over 15 years, she has advised public and private companies primarily in the entertainment, media, and technology sector. Please join me and welcome our moderator and panelists.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for coming back from break. I have today with me four outstanding and distinguished guests that will provide a lot of insight into the technology and what innovation can bring and change the businesses. So without further ado, I think, when we think about innovation and technology, our first reaction is, it must be related to a technology company like Google or Facebook, Tencent, Alibaba. But I think one of the things that you'll find today, as you'll notice, our panelists come from a variety of different backgrounds, from real estate to aircraft to service providers. Like how are different companies all thinking about technology and innovation, and how does that interact between US and China collaborations? So maybe let's start off with a question that I think a lot of us have is, when we think about technology, we hear about artificial intelligence, robotics, virtual reality, Internet of Things, lots of different technologies, right? But what do you panelists think is the next technology innovation that will bring fundamental change to the industry? And what should companies really do to embrace the new technology? Maybe we could start with you, Jeff.
Yeah, nice to meet you guys. My name is Jeffrey. I represent Shanying International, which is one of the largest paper companies in China. So over the last 12 months, we have been heavily investing in US. So we had a transaction in September last year during a very intensive relationship between US and China, but that was not block us to move forward. So over the last 6 months, we have already created about 20 jobs in the States. So in terms of technology, I think, so we are paper manufacturing, right? So it's not about our product, but also it's how we produce our product, right? So the pulp and paper industry is a very heavy investment industry. So our machines if you build a factory, it costs you $1.5 billion, right? It's largely on the equipment facilities. So for all this new equipment, so we are using the new technology, which is very much digital, with digitalization, and give you a lot of automation, also focus on environmental to be green, right? So that's how we invest a lot in US, and we're going to do more in the future.
Yeah, and maybe Julia, since you, with the Blueshirt Group, kind of touches companies with a variety of industries, what do you see as the next technology innovation?
Sure, I'm very happy to be here. Good afternoon, everyone. Blueshirt Group is one of the largest investor relation firm in the United States. And we advised 1/3 of the tech IPO. In last year, we presented 1.5 billion capital raised in the market. And the beauty of the firm is we not only advise company access capital market and go IPO, but also help the company continuously engage in the institutional investor after they become public. So we see a lot of transaction happening in the tech space, where we look at it, we have track record since 1999. The firm all started with the Wall Street bankers and analysts, and we are very heavily on the tech. When we look at the tech space, whether it's the fintech, medtech, adtech, or biotech, and the one fundamental change and transferred everybody's time, the life, that is embedded into daily life. So when we look at the new trends coming, we see it's the blockchain. We see it's AI not only become a buzz name on the AI, but also going to our day-to-day life. You may not realize it. So whether it's driverless car or behavioral into providing the best solution in the banking sector, or in the biotech, we look at how the big data machine learning start to predict how the doctor is going to apply the medicine for the patients. Or we start looking at the ad tech for the advertisement, where we can place the ads in the best return of the corporation. So these things is embedded in our day-to-day life. You may not realize the growth rate is so high now. It's already forgot when the time we have iPhone, it's only 10 years ago. So look at the evolution. We see it's all these things happening. I think the next phase will be the bionic. We will see the bionic embedded into our body. Exoskeleton, we see the development of that. It's a lot of investment money go to that area. We will help the people in the medical sector and the rehab. We also see that into the automobile sectors for people lift heavy things or transportation. So this is the next phase where we see those growth.
Yeah, I agree. And we've seen technology not just changing the forefront, but also kind of the back end, right? One use I could see is for artificial intelligence is now it's become sophisticated such that you can take digital images and AI can quickly identify whether or not you have cancer, whether the tumor is dangerous or not. So there's just a lot of various uses that companies are putting forth to kind of help take the businesses to the next level. And maybe, Brice, you can also comment on that, because I think your company does just exactly that.
Sure. So my name is Brice Nzeukou, product manager at Ampaire. And Ampaire is developing electric aircraft. So we are kind of in the electrification of transportation space. So essentially what we're doing is building aircraft much like Tesla did when they first started out. So they started with the Lotus Roadster and retrofitted that with their electric propulsion system, and then it became the Tesla Roadster. So we're doing that with small turboprop aircraft up to 19 passengers. That's currently what's allowed by the FAA regulations. So kind of the innovations that we're keeping track of are kind of multiple. One of the things that really will allow for the proliferation of electrification of transportation is really the energy storage technology. Right now, kind of the ratio of energy density to range for electric aircraft is about 1:1. So for the specific energy density, that's the energy density per weight of batteries today, is currently at around 300 watt-hours per kilogram. So that roughly translates to about 300 kilometers of range. However, in order for us to electrify an aircraft like a 737, we would need a specific energy density of 3,000 watt-hours per kilogram. Now, we've been doing pretty good so far with about 5% year-over-year increase in energy storage. However, it would take us a really long time for us to get to that 737 level. So without a step change in chemistries or production and the efficiency of energy storage, we really won't see that real proliferation of electrification. However, we would love to see that happen.
Yes, and Jacky, I think you come from a more traditional background type company, and so what do you think is kind of the next technology innovation that your company will bring?
So first, I'm going to give a little background about the organization that I'm representing. So American Wonder Porcelain is our greenfield and ongoing project in Lebanon, Tennessee, or for the last 3 years, and creating more than 200 local jobs in the U.S. And our mother company in China is currently the largest tile manufacturer in sales revenue and production scale. And for our industry, I think the next breakthrough in the technology, there's two sectors. First is in the manufacturing process, the heavy use of automation and artificial intelligence. That's going to be implemented in our production process. The second one is developing new material. So we're working with scientists and an R&D team that developing new material infusing, for example, semiconductors or graphene with our traditional material like ceramic tile to provide more features to the product, not just your normal half floor material. Yeah.
That's great. And so having got a brief background of kind of each of your industries, now switching focus a little bit to research and development, and that's something that is of high focus, right, even for US companies and also Chinese companies, because there's a race to R&D and who can kind of get to the next biggest advance. And so what would be interesting is to get your perspective on what do you think is the biggest difference in R&D between China and US technology companies. What do you think?
I think from our industry, the pulp and paper industry and packaging industry is fully integrated actually. So back in China, over the last 3 years, before that, this industry paid very little attention to the new product, right? It's more about how to produce the product cheaper and faster and in a bigger scale way. But over the last 3 years, the company has really spent a lot of effort on the smart package. So you transfer paper, which is a very environmental friendly material, into a package, right, to substitute the plastic, which is kind of a less environmental friendly package. And the other thing is a lot of products requires better protection, and in a digital marketing phase, you need to have a package to transfer the product nature into consumer, right? And so there are a lot of innovation behind, and we have been investing money in China versus the US. I think I've been working for European and the US company in my majority of my life, 15 years experience in 5 years in Europe and 6 years in US in the leading packaging industry. So I think it's more, they are leading in last, let's say, 20, 50 years. However, I think a Chinese company now, they are playing catching mode, and I think very in a much fast speed mode as well. So I think the gap will become smaller, narrower in the near future.
Yeah.
When I see it's R&D, they are different in a couple different sectors. So when we look at the AI sectors, actually clearly China has a plan, and probably it's make US a little bit nervous because that's how China clearly lay out the game plan and pretty much go to implementation pace and very much top down. And the US is very good on the design, but the bottom up because it's the nature by how the system different. But then when we look at the biotech and the medical sectors, R&D is very different. And it's much more integrated And there's the research effort, very big research effort academically in US. However, clinical trial, access to the data, patient data is not as fast as China because naturally by the population, right? If we think about in past, the oil is really very important for that age, but in this new day and age, the data is new oil. So China is new sodium. So that's how we look at. That's the data enable and the industry to do AI, do more prediction. So this is really, when we look at different sectors, has different differences.
Yeah.
And for us, what we see kind of the differences between R&D in China and in the US, specifically for electrification, you have a lot of companies in China looking at the different components. So you have a lot of companies looking at the motors, the inverters, the energy storage industry is receiving a lot of investment just because there's such a big opportunity there. And in the US, the R&D has largely been around kind of developing the IP on the system integration level. So those are kind of the two major kind of focuses that we've seen differ in the US. Is kind of China tends to sit at the kind of the fundamental, what are the underlying technologies that need to be developed, whereas the US has largely sat on kind of the integration layer and how to put those together in novel ways to, whether it's to disrupt industries or to make processes or production processes more efficient.
Yes, I think I have a very similar idea as Brice. For the development and research in the US, US R&D are more focused on developing fundamental ideas and creating new IPs, and then it's something that you can work on for the next 2-3 decades. And then for China R&D, it's more like commercializing a certain IP that already existed and making them more profitable and efficient. Yeah,
Yeah, I definitely see that. But since both China and US have their advantages, what do you think would be some of the challenges that face both US and China companies with regards to innovation? Is there some collaboration and opportunities there to kind of, help alleviate each other's issues? Like, for example, commercialization versus, development of IP. Like, how can we kind of team together?
Especially
for yours, given your parent is also a Chinese parent.
Exactly. So I think as some of the panelists touch base in prior session, I think adoption has more opportunity in China and make scalable. There's a lot of opportunity in China for the adoption. I think I graduated from MIT, so I have been seeing a lot of collaboration between that institute and the Chinese company. So there's a medium lab in MIT. You will see more than 50% sponsor actually come from China because the Chinese company invests a lot of money. And I think there's a great synergy between the two nations, right? To work together, create a better future for the human being. So my company, I think we kind of support also from application perspective, and we kind of work together with some of the institutions from US and also Europe. Our machine actually many manufactured from Europe, from Germany and from Sweden, and some from US. So kind of a lot of collaboration with different institutions and companies. So it's a kind of win-win, right? So that's the objective for every parties. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
I think in the political area, people more intend to think about localization, regionalization, globalization. But in the reality is today, the company is much more localized, much less localized than everybody thinks. It's much more, international. From the supply chain, from the pattern, from every aspect. What we've been seeing for a lot of companies come to US, raise the capital, do IPO, and a lot of the leverage and the cooperation with institutions in US, and they take the best of the pattern. Also because of patent law, between US and China, so the corporation understand where the patent can be developed or co-developed quickly and give the benefits to the end user. That is very important. So that's why we see is more cooperation, whether it's Cornell or Harvard, MIT, they all be part of force together to develop the solution and for the end use, which is commercialization. When we think about it, sometimes we think about the challenge is could be where the talent resides and where the data can flow, privacy. But in the end of the day, and you will be amazed how corporations overcome that by co-development, work together and find a solution.
Yeah, I agree, and I see that in the entertainment and media space because collaboration, joint ventures are very, very common. Just because, for example, if you want the globalization and localization that you were talking about earlier, you want to have a movie that appeals to the general public in the U.S., but you also want it to be marketed and appealed to the local Chinese audience. So joint ventures and collaborations is something we see a lot in the media space. How about you, Brice, in terms of collaboration? Like, is there any collaboration opportunities that you can see, especially as it relates to, electronic aircraft?
Sure. So for us, a lot of our addressable market really is global. That also means that we need to have kind of a global view in terms of how we're going to develop and create our product. Since we sit at the integrator level, we want to take the best of what's available today, obviously optimized for cost and production. And a lot of that happens in China. And so for Ampaire actually has a wholly owned foreign entity near Hangzhou, and that's where a lot of our future R&D work may actually be for a couple different reasons. One is we're closer to a lot of where the energy storage developments are happening, and it's just also a very strategic place for us to be as air travel is predicted to explode, as was evidenced a little bit by the presentation earlier today for China and for the region in general. And we hope to be able to enable part of that for the region. Yeah. So in terms of, I guess, collaboration, it really needs to be a collaborative effort, and I think that's Ampaire's stance, is how can we get the best of what's available, and we're willing to do that.
Yep.
So my opinion about this is for the two countries, China and the US, we have different strengths. So for the US, we have a very good platform for developing ideas and technologies within, in all the universities, and then this is a very good place to give birth to a good technology and idea. And then what China is good about is, like Jeffrey talked about earlier, it's you need to utilize the funding and the market size of China in order to inject the fund back here and then develop the technology that could be commercialized or globalized for the market.
Yep, thank you. And then I know we've talked a lot about kind of commercialization in China, but over the years, I think China has had a kind of a reputation of being more of a copycat, and and they're trying to gradually evolve to driving innovation. Just curious in terms of the panelists, what new Chinese technology are you most interested in and impressed with, and where do you kind of see it heading towards? Just just based on your experience.
I think, it's kind of dilemma, right? So China has been playing catching mode in the last 20, 30 years. I mean, they just show us the young China, right? That's the fact. So we all growing from that. We have seen this happening in the last 20, 30 years. But I think the new technology developed out of China, what I very impressive is a mobile payment. So right now I go back to China, I don't use any wallet, I don't need a wallet, right? And also internet-based business models for our industry. Let's say we call we have a package. The package need to be printed, right? In the traditional way, you need artwork and use certain medium to translate the ink to that package. It's a long process. It takes about 2 to 3 weeks and to give order to the customer. Right now we have this called based on the cloud-based printing, which convert the digital profile into package instantly. So I think that's very new technology which is developing in China, has been applied and scalable in China right now. So I'm very proud of we can do that.
Is that 3D printing or?
It's not really, it's cloud-based. The digital profile can be print on this package. They say if this would be a cotton package, it can be printed immediately. So in the past, it takes 3 weeks to Analogs first to put it into Qian, and then from there go to the printing machine and convert the ink to the package. It takes a long process, and a lot of mistakes can happen, right? Yeah, a lot of things happening there.
Yeah, that's great. And Julie, I know you look through a lot of IPO companies. So what is that next big technology that you see that's in China that you're like, this is really great?
It's a lot of things actually. So interesting because China took almost 2 decades to catching up, and once get the fundamental level, and you see the leapfrog in terms of application. And the struggle things company have today is try to make American investor to understand what that company is. No longer is single comparable. They have to see the company is combination of, eBay plus ICE plus Square Cash plus this and that. So completely new, mixed, hybrid, improved, where will be very hard to understand unless you go to China. You say, hey, we can live in the world of WeChat's digital currency where you can pay your parking just by scan the QR code. Every ecosystem is living in the app. It's from the digital payment and to going to the Uber in your phone. All the apps you think about is very popular here. It's in one app, right? So this is but this is something we also see. Like people here travel to China often. You see that change. You understand how amazing, and sometimes you wonder, why could that be happening here just to put all the things together, right? So this is the fintech platform. The other ways we look at the blockchain. So the blockchain move much faster and quickly in China. We see the payment space and the lending place, verification, authentication, and the entire KYC, know your customer, and the biometrics to recognize the feature and your voice. It's very common now. You can just look at your face and scan your face, or look at the iris and go through the door. So all these things, it's just become very common in China. That's how we see this is more faster paced than US.
Yeah. Brice, any observations there?
Yeah, for kind of the transportation industry and transportation space, one of the exciting things that's coming out is just the capacity for China to quickly iterate on a lot of these different technologies, especially some of these enabling technologies like chargers, for example. One of the kind of big things that the electric aviation industry is going to need is infrastructure development at airports. And what does that mean? And so we at Ampaire really want to look on a global scale at supporting the developments that are happening in China in terms of charging technology, and also again that's very closely tied to energy storage, and then how that can be standardized also across the globe, because standardization of those technologies is going to be key to kind of propping up our industry.
Okay, so there are a lot of exciting technologies that is being developed in China, and one that I'm very impressed with is actually not from my industry, but it's called FAST. It's essentially the largest telescope humankind have ever built. So this telescope is, what impresses me is, so this kind of research and development, China is not only looking for trying to squeeze the next penny to make the most out of a IP, but still, this technology is, you really won't see the benefit unless there's maybe a alien intelligence get contact with us, or the next 2-3 generations. So this is something that impressed me, that we are instead of being a infrastructure monster building high-speed railways, we are really trying to build something that could benefit for a much longer term, not just our country, but for the human race.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I think one of the things that's been receiving a lot of attention is obviously, and we talked about it earlier today, is the current tension and uncertainty between U.S. and China relations. And what do you think has been the biggest impact of that for the companies and industries for the two countries there? Like, has that impacted each of your businesses at all? And are you optimistic that, you know, we're going to have some collaboration going forward?
Absolutely. I think I joined this company about 2 years ago, right? So before this tension started. So we have a great ambition 3-year plan laid out as a $1.5 billion investment. So it get a little bit hesitant because there's a lot of uncertainty there, right? Because the trading relationship. So then we made we kind of was scale back. We say let's make a smaller scale of the investment, and then to test the market, and then wait and see. And I think for paper and pulp industry, we are heavily relying on the resource, right? Fiber, recycled fiber, so kind of use recycled fiber to produce pulp and paper and send back to China. So kind of balance the resource we have here in the States versus demand in China. So I think there's a lot of synergy between the two countries, but because of the tension, make a lot of investors hesitate, at least slow down the pace. Yeah, and I think with relationship getting better, and I think that can the confidence will be recovered, and I think we will move forward when the times come.
How about you, Julia? Has you seen that impacting the IPO or any of the markets amidst the tensions that have happened?
Definitely. When it started, and I remember I sit on the non-deal roadshow with the CEO, and that's a private equity fund manager is asking, what do you think about the trade war between China and the U.S.? Whether it slow down the business? What do you see? You know, those is always the top question in that time. But gradually, everybody start to adapt it because, you know, when the tariff increase, it's for everyone. It's impact everyone in the sector, and actually it affects every end consumer. So the competition it's just relatively increased, and also there are some industry you just cannot be in silo. Their whole ecosystem, for instance, the battery business, semiconductor business, the whole ecosystem in Asia. Mm-hmm. And think about iPhones, think about how these be produced globally, reassembled and sold. It just cannot be in isolation. And after all, investors start to understand and also have a faith to know the two countries will work together, because in the end of the day, both sides suffering. That's why we see everybody come back to the table, try to get a deal done, which benefits for everyone. So we see the confidence building in the market, and very little people start to ask the question. Everybody adapt to that trend now.
Yeah, I agree.
And for us, we've seen a little bit of impact, and this kind of goes into the venture and startup space with CFIUS and us being an aerospace company. You know, we believe we'd be subject to that. So as we look to raise funds, there are investors who we're having conversations with who are either corporate venture arms or venture capital based in foreign venture capital. that are asking and having concerns about CFIUS and the opportunity for the deal to go through. And so we've seen kind of a chilling effect of those kind of investors really looking to make those investments. So I think that's where we would see the most impact, and similarly felt kind of across the startup industry.
So for us, the tension between the trade between the two countries, it creates uncertainty, and uncertainty will lower companies and industries' expectations in all of the outcomes. So it will result in, say, the fund that was approved to develop certain technologies in like a cross-border collaboration is revoked, or a investment project that was approved get downsized, and then because the confidence is hurt. So this is from our perspective, seeing our industry that being affected by this tension of the two countries.
Yeah, I agree. I think like from my perspective, at least for the deals, people are a little bit more hesitant, but we know that with every cycle, like it's maybe a delay, but if you're a strong company and the economics are good, you'll rebound, and it might be just kind of a timing issue versus a true fundamental issue. I think we've been talking about technology a lot, and I think one of the key areas that drives technology is you having the right people, right, to execute upon those visions and help you kind of get to the next level. And how do you guys think about recruiting and retaining talent, especially in this technological innovation type of way? Has your company successfully been able to attract and retain talent, and what advice can you give? I know a lot of the students here are MBA students. Like, how should they think about that, and from a talent perspective?
I think there are fundamentals, right? I think there are a lot of opportunity here in the States, and also a lot of opportunity in the US. And for our perspective, so we rely on local talents. So I mentioned that we create 200 people, 200 jobs in the last 6 months. Maybe only 5, me and my colleague are Chinese. Majority are local recruited. So I think what people has a faith, have a belief that we create a big vision for the community. So once we make this announcement of acquisition, so we received a lot of support from the different level of government, from state to local communities. So people apply the job very, in a very short time we get people recruited. And I think one of the see big pictures, right? So there is a very positive side, which is the relationship between US and China needs to be and has to be strong. We play a kind of win-win situation. So we give back to the community, bring the job back to the manufacturing industry in the state, and also bring some talents back to work. And these people were redundant in the past, but now we give them opportunity, right? So this has been appreciated a lot by our employee and the executive teams.
In our business, we do see a lot of opportunities. In fact, it's very interesting, the niche is a lot of Chinese company and Asian company come to US for IPO, raise the capital. And once they become public company, they continuously engage with us, through us, to talk to institutional investors. Sometimes they raise more capital. So in order to understand the business and have ability to speak both Chinese and the English become vital, because not only you just have a dialogue with the CEO and the CFO, but you also with the key management team, and often the key management team, they are not fluent in English. So I do see a lot of opportunities there, and we do, constantly looking for the talent to join us. We serve the purpose, and our team is, we have an office in Beijing, San Francisco, and New York, and except the head of Asia group, he is American speak very little on almost no Chinese. The rest of our team are bilingual. So that's really bring the additional value to the table, help us to recruit and retain the talent.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for us being kind of a small startup and a relatively lean organization, kind of the opportunity comes when you see startups kind of enter into largely their growth phases. In the aerospace industry, and for us having a global market, that really means that kind of targeting companies, if you're looking for employment in a certain sector, targeting companies that have more of that global reach. I myself, I'm bilingual, not Chinese or Mandarin, but French as well. So that actually did add value to the team, considering that a lot of the aerospace industry is in France and kind of born out of that Europe with Airbus there as well. So having that bilingual, I'll piggyback on Julia's bilingual aspect, does really add a lot of value. And being here at this conference, and actually our CTO and co-founder, Corey Combs, he's American, but he also speaks very fluently Mandarin. And that was kind of the birth of Ampaire when he was working in China, in Beijing, for 3 years. And so him having that bilingual ability really has helped Ampaire position ourselves really well globally, and has helped us establish our wholly owned foreign entity there. Also having our Senior Vice President of Global Partnerships, Dr. Susan Ying, she's Chinese, and she really flies around the world because of her background. She was a former director at Boeing in research and technology, and also a C-level executive at Comac, China's major aerospace company. So those kind of, having Corey and having Susan together creates a tremendous amount of value for us. And so I do think that's really great.
And then for us, we are also a startup, young company here in the US, just an ongoing project for the last 3 years. And for us to attract and retain talents, I mean, I totally agree with the experience that you shared. And also on top of that, I think we have to align the expectation and values from top to down. Because you have to make sure every one of your employees share the same expectations, and then that's why, and then everybody's effort, because you can never, organization is never a one-man show. Everybody has to put their effort on the same direction as a joint effort to make stuff happen. So for me, one of the very important principle is to align expectations from top to down in the organization.
And I just kind of want to piggyback on that.
Yeah.
One of the things that we have our weekly kind of all-staff meeting every Friday, and one of the things that I thought was really interesting that our CEO does is he says the same thing in every meeting. He always opens up the meeting and he says, we're trying to run a lean organization. Here are our principles. And we've all heard it 1,000 times. But every meeting, every Friday meeting, he'll open up saying the exact same thing. He says our mission statement. He goes through our operating principles. And I think reinforcing that every time, to your point, really sets the expectations for the rest of the team that we're continuously buying in to kind of the organization that our founders are trying to build. And so, looking at a company that you can identify with that has kind of the value alignment that you're looking for, also I think plays a vital role in either accepting a position or even accepting an employee.
I have to agree, and so I work for PwC, and one of the things that our CEO constantly says is, like, one of the themes is your tomorrow, and what that means is how do we digitally upskill our employees so that, we might be an accounting firm, but we need to be able to, talk to our clients about technology, understand what are the upcoming technologies, like Internet of Things, what's blockchain. Like, we have to be able to speak this language because these are what businesses are going toward next, right? So we have to not only talk the language, but believe in it and embrace that in our day-to-day conversations.
Yeah, I just want to add on a little bit. So for us, we provide a lot of on-job training.
Right.
Because we are a very small team and very lean in the way is because we have very senior people work with CEO and the CFO founder. So we have two managing director for accounts, then we have director, and then we have associates. So when we have vital meeting, we always invite them, so give them the opportunity to hear what is company trying to resolving and what is the concern, the issue we try to fix. So that is providing the on-job training, and which is give them a lot of opportunity to learn, to be excited, and to be part of a team.
Right. Yeah, you want technology to be part of the recruiting. You want them to be involved, because then that's the way that they can really truly embrace it. Okay, so I want to switch to a very interesting topic, because 5G, and we've heard a lot about 5G. It's a lot of public attention. Just curious in terms of what your views on the prospects and potential. And I know, a lot of rumors about, 5G being launched in 2019, 20, China, US. What are your views of 5G?
I think it's a very hot topic right now, right? So because that's the battlefield for the future competitiveness. So a lot of impact. It's a kind of infrastructure investment drive a lot of really relevant industries. My understanding, I think one of the panelists says as tier 2, I agree on that. I think is a rising power and the rolling power how to compete. I think there's a lot of synergy between different parties to work together to create a better thing for the humankind. And so that's my only comments on that. I would expect a lot of collaboration than hostile competition.
Yeah.
So I would say if somebody call you to say, I want to acquire 5G technology in US, you just tell them that's not possible. That's how last year I get a phone call for the large MA deal,
Right.
where, company willing to put a huge stake with couple $100 million looking for the 5G solution in the United States, and the first thing is blocked by CFIUS. So you don't even go there to think about that. Number two, I think China probably is a little bit faster on that regard. And it's about the speed of, transmit the data. It is about speed, how the entire ecosystem, the phone, the computer, everything will be used. And it's investment in the infrastructure, and it's also investment in the talent and software and intellectual capital. So it's almost like a future of internet, right? So I see these eventually will happen, and just the resource put in, who gets there first, and in a different domain.
The need is there, right? Because when we think about the big data, the streaming content, virtual reality, we need that technology kind of to help bring those services to light.
Yeah.
For us, 5G doesn't really necessarily apply to our product, but I do think it applies to the industry. I think that we can see a future in transportation at large with kind of the sharing economy and driverless cars starting to, those technologies potentially becoming realities. Is 5G is going to be necessary to sustain the connectivity that those platforms are going to need. And even kind of taking that future model, and that future model could actually be shifted towards aviation as well, kind of with the electrification of regional or thin haul transportation, you could easily see some of the same kind of, I order up an airplane, or a seat on an aircraft to fly from here to, let's say, Corona, or to Ontario Airport, or to Van Nuys, Burbank. By the way, there are a ton of airports in the Los Angeles area. So it's really interesting to see kind of 5G as enabling a lot of new business models within aviation space, coupled kind of with our kind of disruption of the industry.
And similar to us, 5G does not necessarily apply to the products that we make, but it is the fundamental technology that behind stuff like the Internet of Things that we will definitely benefit from this kind of technology as a company. And I do think this is going to be a game changer for the next 2-3 decades, because it is really the fundamental of a lot of different technologies like autonomous driving, artificial intelligence, and also, like I mentioned just earlier, the Internet of Things.
Yeah, and it could be like a combination
Yes.
too. It's not like, it's not siloed, it could be a combination of all.
Yeah, I think it's like we'll see some hybridization of industries that we haven't necessarily thought of before.
Right.
That will kind of now be connected.
Yes.
Yeah, it will be a great acceleration because a lot of data is stored in cloud today, almost all. It's in the AWS or Azure. Then we'll look at, in addition to quantum computing, and where is how the connection can make it happen faster. That will enable quickly deployment of driver's car and the calculation of the different Internet of Things. Definitely that is the enabler, has to be there.
I want to truly thank each and every one of you for being here today and sharing your great thoughts on technology and innovation. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.